Welcome to the Buzz Podcast. I'm your host, Mosquito.
And I'm Maureen Nylin.
The Buzz Podcast is where business, technology, and innovation collide. It's where we deep dive into candid conversations with leaders who are pushing the boundaries in healthcare, technology, and beyond.
It's also where you're going to hear industry experts who are rewriting the rules, and in some cases, they're breaking them. So don't forget to join us for each new episode and like and subscribe to the Buzz Podcast.
Welcome to another fabulous episode of the Buzz Podcast. In this episode, we're going to cover the innovative touchless patient experience, who's touching me, and how do I pay for it. We've got our wonderful guest here today, but first, I'm going to introduce myself, Mike Mosquito, your host, and I am with the always wonderful Maureen Nylin. How are you doing today, Maureen?
I am good, Mike, as always. And I'm always excited to be with you. And as everybody knows, the Buzz Podcast is really where we bring big questions and big ideas that are happening in healthcare. And today we have the most amazing guest joining us.
Yes, the wonderful Rachel Weissberg, Director of Strategy at Neteera. I actually have my Neteera device right here. Rachel, so glad to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you both so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Well, we're looking forward to this conversation. You're an emerging and new company in the healthcare space. We're glad to have you here to talk about what's happening new with Neteera. And so, again, with you being here today, we're going to introduce to our listeners something they may not have seen in the industry, something they may not know about the industry, and how do we introduce a new technology? You come to the Buzz, you talk about it with Maureen and I, and then from there, you're able to go and reach out to Rachel and her company and maybe integrate this new technology into your health system, or how to collaborate and partner with her on some groundbreaking work that they're doing in technology and in healthcare. So with that, let's just jump into some of these questions we got for you today. So let's talk about, again, new technology, a new company. It's been around for quite some time, but let's talk about your career journey and what brought you down this path as the director over at Neteera.
So I think when I talk about my story, it started when I was young. And so I've been in healthcare, I joke, my entire life. When I was young, when I was 9 years old, my parents took my brother and I they said it was a mini vacation. And we went up to the Bonaventure Hotel in the 1970s, late 1970s, that was a really, really hot place to go. So they took my brother and I up to this hotel. We were so excited. I remember my brother and I had to stand and we were only allowed 2 people in the room. So we even had to hide in the back because my mom and dad were scared that they might have penalties. We had this amazing trip with both my parents, and right before the morning before we left, my mom and dad sat us down and they shared with us my mom had terminal cancer. There wasn't a cure. And I would say as a 9-year-old, and this is 40 years ago, it was rather, rather intense and really scary. I'll start by saying my mom's alive today. We'll go there. So now everyone will have a smile on their face. So here we are 40 years later, mom's still alive. But my father was a radiologist, a well-known radiologist in the United States. And because of who he was, he had access to clinical trials. He had access to all of these things for my mom. So we were able to get my mom into a trial. She was able to go into remission and has for the rest of my entire life has gone in and out of remission. But if you met my mother today, and I think some of you, some people out here may have, they would know she's lively. You wouldn't even know she's sick. But I learned at such an early age how access isn't available to everybody. And I think as I progressed throughout my career, I faint at the sight of my own blood. So going into medicine was just not something that I could do. And I ended up gravitating to technology, to healthcare technology. And I've spent the last 25 years in this industry, working with different organizations, taking different products to market, and building successful teams in this healthcare space, and really helping our providers. The time where we are today is exciting, and it's really why I chose to go to Neteera. you look at how technology has caught up to our ability to really deliver the care that we need. There's so many new tools. There's so much exciting technology. And I think that this is a time where we can use this technology to get better access, care, and just help our caregivers overall just be more efficient and do what everyone wants to do, which is practice medicine and be involved with our patients and the care.
Well, I think that as you're talking about your journey and how it started personally with your mom, and
Mm-hmm.
again, the ability to have her through your dad probably have better care, that
Mm-hmm.
is one of the paramount problems we have in our community today, right? That's one of the big
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the big strategies and hurdles we're trying to solve for the disparities in care, our rural health initiatives that where people don't have access to care, where they don't have access to even good food for their children, right? Some of the smaller things, just think about
Mm-hmm.
food, much less have a hospital or doctor in their town, having Wi-Fi so they can have broadband access in their home. So the things that are afforded the metro area populations of healthcare providers and patients are not the same once you get outside the perimeter of the city, right? And those are pivotal moments that you get to lean on, and they've helped guide you through this path of, where do I want to be, and helping someone on their journey, and what does that look like, you know? So it's fascinating to hear about your journey. And do you have any other? What are some challenges that you've seen that have helped define this path, other than your mom? You've had some other challenges along the way that have helped shape where you're going with this career.
So I've always been somebody that asks why. If you talk to my parents, they'll say I've been negotiating since I came out of the womb, right? Always negotiating, always ask why. So the answer is no. Why? You just, and I, throughout my, you know me, so you're laughing. It's true though. I'm constantly asking why? And as I've worked and throughout the different organizations that I've worked with, I've always been on, you're part of a team and you're looking at a workflow or you're looking at a process, like scratching your head. Why are we doing it this way? There's got to be a better way to do this. And so I've spent my entire life always looking at things. Every company I've been at is really looking at what's the process, what's the workflow. I think we can do this better and redefining that. So over and over and repeatedly, that's something that I've just gravitated based on how I was born, the way my brain ticks. And so it's been this constant evolution of as I've moved through the organizations, just climbing higher to now having all of strategy and really thinking about how can we be better as an organization? What are the problems that we need to solve? What's the right market that we go to do this? And that's where I live and breathe.
That's
So, when
beautiful.
you're talking about the problems that you're trying to solve, give us some examples of what's happening right now within the hospital space that's really challenging that you feel like Neteera has that edge.
So we obviously talked about access, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. But I think the other thing is, we hear a lot about staffing, and you know, it's not just noise. Staffing is it's not going away. We have plenty of patients, and that number is going to keep rising and rising and rising. I think I read a study. There's 10,000 people every day turning 65. And
Wow.
obviously, we need more care as we get older. But you think about how are we going to how are we going to care for that amount of patients? We're not the gap between the caregiver and the patient is just widening and widening and widening. How do we solve for that? And that's where I go back to this. This is the time where technology can really help. It's these ideas where it's the staffing because I don't have enough staff. I don't have the time. I can't turn my patients because I can't get to my patients to turn them in the bed. Or I might be missing something because I'm working with another patient and something else is happening to somebody else that I don't know about. The beauty of what we're doing at Neteera and why I was so excited about it is we have a device in every single room that's continuously monitoring a patient without touching them in any way. And we're able to see if there's a change in their vitals. We know if they're heading in a wrong direction. We know if something really bad is happening. And that's giving your care team the ability to better prioritize, intervene early, and ultimately help with some of that staffing, which is the backbone of what we need to do and we need to fix as an industry.
It's wonderful. It's
So
wonderful.
It's one of the most pressing issues. We talk about
Mhm.
that backbone of care and access and staffing those. We got to talk about staffing for those beds that are filled, tackling that bed availability in
Mhm.
healthcare. Why is that one of the most pressing issues in healthcare still today? Bed availability, both inpatient, post acute. Rachel, from your perspective, how can we address this challenge? How can Neteera contribute to this
Mhm.
solution?
So interestingly enough, there's 1 million inpatient beds and there's 1 million long-term care post-acute beds. So there's 2 billion beds. I think everyone would agree we have a lot more. we
People.
It's not enough. But you can't even. So when you look at just in an organization, in a health system alone, it's about having the right patient in the right bed at the right time. And how do I ensure that I'm having the highest acuity patients? How am I treating them, getting them in, getting them out? Obviously, getting them out when they're ready to get out, but we're
Right.
also not leaving them there because we don't have a place to put them. I think that that's where we're so burdened right now in the system is we can't move people out. A good friend of mine, her mom fell. She's 80 years old, 83. She just fell and broke her hip. We hear about this all the time. So she's admitted into the hospital. It took 4 weeks to get, sorry, 4 weeks. It's 16 weeks to get her out of the hospital
Mm.
and moved into a setting where she could now she actually she's at home but with full-time care, but there wasn't a long-term care bed for her, so she had to sit in this hospital for days on end, obviously not happy at all because she didn't want to be there, but also taking up a bed that could have been used for somebody else in a higher acuity instance. And so when you look at, so going back to Neteera and where we believe where we're seeing the value is we have devices we have 20,000 devices today deployed. 90% of those are in long-term care facilities. But how does that impact the hospital? If we're able to see things in the long-term care facility and say, hey, we've got a problem with this patient, we can treat them in place and not move them back to the hospital. Because once they go back to the hospital, they're admitted and they're stuck there and we can't get them out. So
Right.
we need to keep people where they are, treat them in place, and keep those beds open for, like I said, those higher acuity cases.
What I
That makes
like about
sense.
the approach too is that it's keeping both sides of the balance in check. You don't want
Uh-huh.
the patients readmitted because obviously that's costly to the health system. And the
Yep.
patients don't want to be there either. So everybody
Absolutely.
benefits by using
Uh-huh.
this type of an approach.
Uh-huh.
That's wonderful. So let me ask a little bit more then in the context of home health care. So we've talked about
Uh-huh.
hospital, we've talked about the long-term care facilities. Does Natera have a space in that home health care area?
It's funny you ask that because I think every single day I get an inquiry from somebody on can you do something in the home? Going back to even what I just shared with the numbers of post-acute beds, that's part of the problem is we don't have a place to send people. So is there a subset of the population or is there a specific condition that we can send people home? Could we send them? The idea is let's send them home, admit them to the home. They don't need to go into a long-term care facility. But you hear about it now today. They send patients home with chronic heart failure. You get your kit, you get your scale, you get all those things. Our vision is they go home with a Neteera device as well. So we're working on a device that would be able to go into the home and it'll sit there and it'll monitor and let you know what's going on, vital signs with the patient when they're at home.
Will that be anywhere in the home, Rachel? We're talking about not just in the living room. We're talking the bedroom, the bathroom, maybe the immediate exterior of the home. A little bit
So,
more for our listeners out there. For how do you
so
see?
oh, sorry.
No,
So
go ahead.
our device is line of sight. So in order to use our device has to see you. So we could potentially put a device in the bathroom. We could put a device over the bed. We can put a device in, the lazy boy where in front of the TV where many people spend a lot of time. The idea that is how we would deploy in the home. And we're still figuring that out. The home is very different than a hospital. Right? In a hospital is one to many. Going into a home, you have other, and this goes back to the access, right? Do we have Wi-Fi? Do we have connectivity? The things that we need in order to deploy. You start looking at even socioeconomic conditions when you get in the home. Does somebody even know how to use the beauty though of our device is that you don't have to interact with it. So even somebody that doesn't know how to use technology. So today there's a lot of wearables that you have to put on. You have to initiate. I have to learn how to use it. This, it's installed. It's there. You set it, and it does what it needs to do, and the patient doesn't even need to interact with it. So I think it truly is. You'll see, as we move into understanding the home horizon, which we're all looking at, this is a technology that will be embedded into it.
Mike, can I
That's
just say
nice.
there's two things that really get me excited about this.
Uh-huh.
One is the freedom that patients regain with this technology, because there's nothing more
Uh-huh.
frustrating than being tied to a bunch of wires or cables
Uh-huh.
and then being stuck in your own bed, which we all know in the long run anyway doesn't benefit the patient and it doesn't benefit the clinicians. And so just being able to regain your own freedom, I think that's so critical. And then the other piece that I found really interesting that Mike, you suggested, and then Rachel, you confirmed, the restroom, because that's such a
Uh-huh.
neglected area and it's not like you can put a camera in there. And so tell me more about those concepts. I think that awareness needs to be heightened.
Yeah. So the beauty of our device is there's no camera. So it can go into places where people would not want to have a camera watching them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we have had some conversation with, I'm going to start by saying product development in a startup, you have to sort of pick and choose because you're very nimble and you're very lean. Where we are today, what we're doing in the future, and we know the home and we also know about the restroom. We know that there's a place in the restroom. Have we started that yet? No. Are we looking at partners to help us get there? Yes. And I think that, I had one health system that I'm working with say to me, we could put it in every single one of our restrooms. And I'm just sort of scratching my head thinking, okay, well, that's another project that we need to work on. What keeps happening every day as we talk to different people is we're learning about all these other areas that we didn't think about that this technology becomes applicable to. And I think it's starting to understand, where do we prioritize that work? Because unfortunately, we can't do everything at this moment. Will we get to everything? Yes. But we are starting right now to really help streamline some of those workflows and inefficiencies in hospitals is where we're starting. And then as we move into the bathroom becomes something that we want to look at, the home becomes something that we want to look at. But there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like I said, every day I'm learning about something else that people think we can use our technology for.
That's awesome, because bringing a new technology to market isn't easy. I've done it myself. I've done 20 plus years in this industry, bringing products to market, working with nurses like Maureen
Mm-hmm.
that will sit next to me and say, "You're out of your mind. That's never going to work." Here's designing the best workflow available based on the technology and for the processes that the clinicians have to go through. And so dealing with especially FDA regulations, what are some of those complexities that you've had and your group has had to encounter in promoting these types of solutions that are going to be sitting in the restrooms, in the private
Mm-hmm.
areas that could be at home or in the hospital?
So this is my first time working with an organization that is FDA regulated, or that we have to work with the FDA.
Hmm.
It's a whole different ballgame. The one thing that it does is it really ensures that your device is safe. You're doing what you say you do. That it's going to be secure. Those things. There's a lot of regulations that go along. I think the most important thing is that anything that goes through the FDA is evidence based. So everything that we're doing and everything that we submit, we have to show that it worked, and this is the value that we were able to bring back, the use case, everything that goes with it. So all of our statements have to come from evidence based. I can't say things that we can't do. I'm not allowed to talk about we can say we might be able to do that. We think we can do that. But until we've actually done it, we can't say it. Something else I think that is interesting with the FDA is everything that we submit is an intent for use, instructions for use. So anyone that's FDA regulated or anyone that has an FDA stamp certification, you have these published IFUs. This is just something to know. So if you want to know, you can start comparing technologies side by side with the real accuracy, and it's all evidence. There's no marketing fluff. It is what it is, and it'll tell you, all the highs and all the lows of everything that we do. So it's tough. It takes a long time to get through FDA. We're working on blood pressure. I think a lot of people know that. We're excited for that to come out, but it is a rigorous ride to ensure and get all of the metrics and the usability because no one's done it before. So,
but that's what makes it exciting.
sure.
And at the same time, all of it's complex. I can't even imagine some of the loopholes that you have to navigate through in order to be able to get this product to market in the way that will match what the consumer needs are. Similarly, I can't imagine how expensive it probably is just to create a voice and a space within our industry. So when you're trying to highlight and create excitement, you've got to do that through events, I would imagine. And most of the events that I have the pleasure of attending are very expensive. So have you found that there's specific strategies that help to bring your voice to the market and overcome that challenge of just the expense of being there?
It's funny that you asked that because we just got finished doing our marketing budget for next year, and it's hard. You're working in a startup environment. I joke, and people that know where I come from know I come from these billion-dollar organizations where I had budget to do whatever I needed to do, and now I've got some change in my pocket, right? So it's I went from deep pockets to change in my pocket, if I have any change at all. It becomes a exercise in understanding really where your buyer is, and also leaning on making sure we're attending the right places and maximizing the time that we are there. The other thing too is it's about leveraging partnerships. So the beauty of Neteera is we do integrate with different companies and we have different partners. So trying to work with them, so that helps with some of the discount, getting a discount or paying a fraction of the price to be at some of these events. But they are, they're so expensive, and it really is a burden. It's unfortunate because technologies like Neteera, we're not the only innovative technology that's out there. It's the events are expensive, and not everyone can go there because the costs are so high.
I 100% can agree with you there that some of these events have are limiting
Mhm.
technology being able to be seen because the barrier to entry for 5 people, 3 people to show up to the conference, they're not curtailed, or they're not tailored for startups that don't have those deep pockets.
Mm-mm.
And the Buzz and our sister program, the Recap's been at a lot of industry conferences this year. Maureen and I are going to be doing a year in review. They're going to talk about several of these industry events, and those that are going to be tailored for those new startups where they want to invest their dollars. So you've got a limited budget, you're planning for next year. You may not be able to get to some of the big shows, but maybe you can scatter your technology
Mhm.
innovation and thought leadership around several of the key ones that are up and
Yeah.
coming, that are bringing about the innovation, where the leaders, the CXOs of these health
Mhm.
systems, will want to be able to see you and engage with you. So I think
Mhm.
that's a very great point that we need to bring out here on the Buzz. And again, this is the candid conversation for our listeners about, hey, how do you find technology? Where do you go to find the technology like Neteera and folks like Rachel? It's not always going to be at the big conferences lost on the floor. Sometimes you need to be able to dig a little deeper into some of these conferences that are bringing about innovation, and be able to talk to these thought leaders about how they're going to make these changes in the healthcare marketplace. So as we talk about what's next, do you have a calendar? You've put that calendar together for next year. Do you have some exciting places you're going to be going that you want to tell our listeners about, where they can find you?
So obviously we'll be at Vive that coming in February. I think we'll all be there. I will do some, because we're in the senior space. We do Leading Age, we do ACA, we do some of those larger events. We'll be at HIMSS, it, on the peripherals, right? So, but we're trying to be where we need to be.
Right. Do you have a specific strategy for when you enter or when you're going to engage at these conferences? Do you have a strategy for how do you want to meet prospective clients? How can they find you?
So we'll promote that we're there. So as we use LinkedIn, we promote that we're there. We'll promote in our company newsletter. We'll promote different places to let people know that we're there. Certainly go through our database. Work on getting people to know in advance. This is where we are. We'd love to see you while we're there. Trying to work that angle. We have a booth at Vive, so we'll direct people to that location. It's over by the Chime Lounge. So if anyone wants to find us, we'll be right around the corner.
There you go. There you go.
I use platforms like this as well to get my message out of where I will be.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Neteera is a sponsor of the Buzz. So again, not just a one-time event for hearing about technology at a conference. Rachel's decided to come to the Buzz and announce what's happening new, what Neteera is going to be launching in 2025. So you'll be hearing more about what she and her team will be launching into the industry in 2025 and beyond, because we believe in showcasing what's new with our sponsors. Where are they going? What are they going to be providing for you, the listeners? And how can you find them and be able to engage them? And maybe not on a show floor where you're in a booth, but maybe here where you can take it offline and have a conversation. You can reach out to Maureen and I will be glad to connect you with some of these great innovative companies. But it's
Absolutely.
always great to hear what's new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm excited for all the upcoming events too. So Rachel, just being able to connect again with you is always fun. But I know that we have to wrap up. So as we close, I always like to tie everything back to the patient because that's the nurse in me. And I just thought you started with your story and shared your mom. And thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to share a very quick story and then I'd like your thoughts on it. So I have shared in other situations with my son-in-law's permission. He's a type 1 diabetic. And he had an unusually high episode of blood sugar. And again, it was unusual for him. It skyrocketed. They could not get it back under control. And so my daughter's calling and she's worried. And my advice to her, of course, you need to go to the ED. Don't stop. Don't pass go. Just get there. And now, again, knowing as a previous ED nurse how the system works, I know that the person that's checking her and my son-in-law in don't have any clinical experience. And so I'm feeding her the key words that she needs to say. So that way they will call a triage now. And then he just bypasses that whole experience and gets right to the back. Well, that didn't happen. And so instead of what I envisioned, they put both of them in the waiting room and he continued to deteriorate. And so I'm getting these urgent texts from my daughter. Mom, they're not taking me back. What should I do? What should I do? And so the mama bear and the nurse are both coming out at the same time. It was quite a situation. And I kept asking her, please go back up to the desk and let them know what's going on. Make sure you say these things. Well, she did that. And the response back to her when she said, I think my husband's going to pass out. We'll never forget this. The person says to her, well, the chairs have seat belts, so I would suggest that you strap him in. So that way, if he does pass out, he won't fall and hit his head. That was the care that was given. So immediately after this happens, I think now what could have been different, and I think your solution may have been an answer because it would have had eyes on him, even if a clinician wasn't there. And it would have given me a little bit of, I think, a feeling of safety, knowing that he was being monitored. So, we've talked so much about the possibilities. Has anyone ever brought this up to you, or what else have we potentially envisioned that we haven't talked about?
So this was one of the very first places that we started. As we looked at where inside a hospital does it make sense to start looking for places for Neteera, it was in the blind spots. Where do we not have, and we say eyes, but it's not eyes. Where do we need intelligence on patients for vital signs that we don't have that today? And the ED became one that was, unfortunately, situations are happening in the ED everywhere where patients are coming in, they're not being triaged correctly, or there's just too much of a wait, so they can't get in. Right? You're classified in those, the rankings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The threes are you're an old ED, you're an ED nurse, so you know that, but you're having the wrong people waiting in the lobby. And so we said we tackled this early on, and we're in, I'd say, some final stages in what we're doing, but we are integrating our device with a chair manufacturer. So the device will be sitting in the chair. So when you're in the waiting room, every chair is monitored. So our technology has two different types of alerts. It's a threshold where it's too high or it's too low, and the other is a baseline. So within about 90 seconds of time, the device learns you, and it learns your specific parameters. And so you would get an alert based on it. So we'll start seeing those deteriorations. So we see two. So we see the patient deteriorate. And then if it's something really bad happened and they fell over, we would get that alert too. But so that'll be going on in the chair. You're just sitting in the chair, and the care teams we have whoever's monitoring or looking out for those things will be notified. Hey, something's happening. And in the event that was your son, hopefully he didn't pass out, but to his wife, who saw him deteriorating and slowly deteriorating, they would have seen that too. And somebody's being notified, and they're bringing that person back so that we can get that patient, we can get them care. So that's exciting. That's what we're working on. And it'll just be a chair that'll be fully outfitted that you can drop into an emergency department.
That's awesome. And I should have told the end of the story. He is okay. He eventually got care. Of course, we were frustrated with the experience, but thank goodness, just like your mom, it ended up being a really fantastic outcome. But it is an example of how quickly patients can change, and not every one of those experiences has a happy ending. So being cognizant of that is key.
Well, Rachel, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the Buzz Podcast today. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us and your journey. And we look forward to seeing you at these shows this coming up year.
You'll see me. Thank you both so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to spend time with the two of you, even if it's just virtually.
Well, you are truly inspiring. So we are very grateful that you shared some of your afternoon with us. And of course, we want all of our listeners to take the time to learn more about the amazing work that Neteera is doing. If you just visit their contact page at neteera.com, you'll be able to connect with Rachel or someone else within her team.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Buzz Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you come back for our next exciting episode. And until next time, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to you, our listeners. And we look forward to you staying innovative and stay buzzing.